Oh yeah, no,
It's gonna be worth more than the car.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. You make a good point. And you just the exhaust quality looks pretty good on here compared to a lot of cars. So hopefully it won't rot out. And of course, if you're in the Midwest, it doesn't matter anyway. It'll have a hole in it in 7 years.
Nah, the Honda's exhausts are pretty good.
Even the modern ones?
They probably got away with all the flanges because that's where all the Hondas go bad. But this thing's got, I mean, they're usually breaking around the welds, and this thing's got welds everywhere on it. So who knows?
It's one of those you just don't know. But how are the modern Hondas? Are they still?
Oh, like the CRVs?
Yeah.
The muffler flange will be rotted out, then it's rotted out of the cat, then it's rotted in front of the cat, then it needs AB, the whole, it needs the whole.
When they're multi-piece, though, you're talking about.
Right. I mean, we've had countless CRVs need from the manifold to the tailpipe. Because this piece is bad, well now if you touch that, now that piece is bad, well now I touch that, so you have to change everything.
Scott, we've just put the Honda Civic Si on the Longacre hybrid scales, and the curb weight is pretty much as directed, 2,920 pounds. And now we're gonna talk about this mess under here.
It's not a mess.
It looks messy.
It does, it looks extremely messy.
It doesn't have a glamour cover.
I'm surprised, right? There's so much freaking hood, they had to put a grab foam on a prop rod.
Oh, because the prop rod heats up so
and
much?
look, it's so hot, they even got fans up here.
Those aren't fans, those are the new style clips, fan clips.
Oh.
They do look like fans though. All right, so it's this, okay, technically it's not the same 1.5 liter in the Civic EX that we saw, but it is, but it's not. So they've made just a couple changes here, more than a couple. The headwork is totally different. The valves are sodium filled. The turbo is the same size except the impeller's different because it creates more boost at the high RPM. It doesn't just fall flat on its face, but it's making about 200 pounds of torque and about 200 horsepower, really close to that. And they advertise that it'll hit 20 PSI a boost, but most of the time it's between at least 16 and 17 at peak. I don't know if it's like an overboost at 20, but the big reason why you're probably not gonna see this on the spec sheets, that this car is probably slower than it should be, is because second gear hits fuel cutoff at 57 miles an hour. It doesn't go all the way to 60, so you gotta shift. So I'm sure it's losing time from that because this feels absolutely more than adequate for a front wheel drive car. I know they put more power with the Type R, but with the way that this is set up, with the limited slip that the Trans has, it's really, really good for a street car. I mean, it's not a sports car, but it is really fun to drive. And I said this in the earlier, well, I'm gonna say this. This is kind of my new favorite front wheel drive compact. In terms of drivability, it's really good. Now,
that's some big words.
It is, because I really like the Mazda and I like the Hyundai, the Elantra Sport too. This is much, much better. And a lot of it is mechanical changes to make it that good. We're gonna take a drive in the new Honda Civic Si. We're gonna see exactly how this car behaves. Is it enjoyable as an everyday car? How's the performance? And some of the quirks. Honda kind of helped to create this stigma or this popularity over the front wheel drive compact car. They help to define what it means to have fun and have, good economy at the same time. And this new Civic is kind of not really connected too much with the past roots for Honda. No longer do you have naturally aspirated motors, but a lot of what's good about the Civic platform is still here. It rides good, it's practical, it's comfortable. You have a manual gearbox that's really enjoyable to use. But the one disappointment here, just an everyday driver, is this motor sounds like, it just sounds like nothing. It is so uninspiring, much like many of the modern turbo motors. You don't hear anything, it just sounds like a sewing machine. And despite their efforts to kind of spice up the exhaust, well, you don't hear that either. Now with sport mode on and traction control off, you know, this offers a lot of fun. The steering's sharper, the throttle response is sharper, and then the dampers go into a more firm setting. So the thing is, when you put it in sport, it's not like a night and day transition. You know, the dampers don't get ridiculously hard where you're bouncing all over the road. There's still compliance. You could drive it in this mode almost all the time, but I choose not to usually. I usually keep the sport mode off and it's totally fine. Even the power and performance is good. Now people are obsessed with performance figures, and on a car like this, it's just not gonna blow you away. You have a turbocharged 1.5 liter, which means you don't have a ton of power. But if you wanna go from a start, this car is totally adequate for the street. There's minimal torque steer and it gets going really well. There's a little tire spin. The fuel cutoff is at 57 miles per hour in second gear, so that's partially why you're going to see a little bit of a problem with the 0 to 60 numbers. You have to make a third shift. This car is deceivingly quick despite the 0 to 60 numbers, and you have so much torque, you have so much thrust at the lower RPM. It's not like the old Hondas where you had to rev them out. Now, the only disappointment here is because of the way the turbo is tuned on here, it does make power all the way to the red line, which is great, except fuel cutoff comes up so quick that you just want it to rev more. The next is the engine. It always feels satisfying. I mean, for street driving, you couldn't want anything more. There's just always torque. There's always that surge that you feel when you're just quarter throttle. And on the highway, you don't have to wind it out. And partially, that's the reason why I'm getting 34 to 35 miles per gallon all the time. And that is an incredible number for how much fun I've been having driving this. There's